Without Huck, there probably wouldn't have been a supply business left. You know, Zeiss died, and who was going to? I mean, Huck set. You know, that was a hands-on in the basement, him making machines. He saw the vision to be a great businessman. He became very wealthy. Hey, more power to him. You know, they said about Ed Hardy. You know, Ed Hardy's done more for tattooing than half the people I know. He was right place at the right time. More power to him. You know, if anybody deserves it, it'd be Ed or Lyle or somebody wonderful for tattooing. You know.
Yeah, right place at the right time with the right talent too, and the right vision.
Right.
So. You know,
yeah, Lyle Tuttle said he'd be drawing stick people. He said he was the right place at the right time. The 60s, San Francisco, Rolling Stones magazine. But Lyle's a great historian. You know, he still loves tattooing. Just went to Antarctica and tattooed, so he's the only guy ever tattooed on all 7 continents.
Yep.
And he's 82. You know, he's about the coolest cat in tattooing.
Yeah, I had him on the podcast and lost the audio. It was about 2 hours of a wonderful conversation. So I'm sure that I've talked to Lyle here in this last week and was bullshitting with him, and I'm sure we'll get a sit down chat again. And I had such a great time this last. I turned 40 this last October, and spent my day with in San Francisco. I got tattooed at Tattoo City by Doug Hardy.
Oh, and, sure.
I spent lunch with Lyle, and then had some drinks afterwards with Lyle as well. So it was a great birthday. Got to hear some fun stories and some great one-liners.
Lyle's great. Yeah, Lyle's great, man. He's sharp as a tack, you know.
Yeah. So,
you know, what a life. Korean War, swimming from Alcatraz. I mean, he is the most interesting man in tattooing.
He swam from Alcatraz, huh?
Oh, yeah. Walked the Golden Gate Bridge. He was wounded in the Korean War, rode motorcycles. I mean, he's done, if it's been, you know, tattooing Antarctica at 82, come on, you know.
Yeah.
If there's an interesting fella, that's it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that he's one of those guys I think you can find inspiration in, too, because he was never, and I think out of his own mouth, he said he was a flash artist. You know, he wasn't a guy that was going to push it like Ed was doing, and he's still at 82. He's in our industry. He's in our community. And I've made a distinction on the podcast, if you listen to the old shows, of our tattoo industry, which is the 6th fastest growing industry in the world, or whatever it is at this point, and our community of people is very small. And the people that are pushing the right things for tattooing, like, you know, the Bristol Tattoo Club. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit earlier. When I asked Chuck Eldridge, another guy I've been able to hang out with on a few occasions, and
Chuck's a good guy.
Used to go out to the archive in Berkeley and hang out with him, and go have a sandwich at the diner across the street. And, but he told me when I asked him what some of the historical things that and ethics and ideas that tattooers have had over the years, what are the things that are being lost, and what is important to bring back? And he said the clubs were one of the main things that he missed, and you know, the Bristol Tattoo Club being the oldest in the world, right?
Right. Well, and Les Cuse formed that in England in 1953, and he came to Sandusky, Ohio, to Al Sheffley's in 56. And Spaulding and Rogers and Zeiss and Dave Paul, the guy that taught me, and a handful of other guys were at that convention. That was kind of basically the first convention that everybody remembers. And it was to share information, you know, and then because Les Cuse was the premier artist of England at the time. He was voted the king of tattooists. Then Al Sheffley came up with like the, I don't know, Sandusky tattoo thing. You know, it was a club. And Al would go to England and visit them, and, you know, Huck and Al and Paul, all these guys are friends, you know. And then Les Cuse's 2 sons, Billy and Danny, tattooed. Danny passed away not long ago, and his son, Jimmy Scuse, runs it now. And Jimmy's son is learning to tattoo now, otherwise it would end with Jimmy. But it's just great historic, you know, it was a bunch of guys get together in 1956 to help each other out, you know.
Is that still the sentiment that it's being pushed forward with? Yeah,
I think so. The BTC, like if I see a guy with a Bristol Tattoo Club shirt on, now we're going to have them associates, so anybody can buy a T-shirt. But the real members, you see them, man. I mean, it's just like gives you the inside hookup. I went to England. I was invited warmly by BTC members. When people join the Bristol Tattoo Club, if they're artists, they can get on an artist site, and then people like Kingpin, Lucky's, Bickney offer a discount to those artists. It's $20 to join the club, so this is like one order, you've got your $20 back for life, and you get a discount from major suppliers.
Yeah.
But you can also, it's a social network. You say, I'm going to be in Germany. Does anybody have work for me? I'm going to be in California. Has anybody got a place for me to crash on the couch? Yeah. And most of them are really good people. I haven't met any bad ones,
Yeah. Yeah. Do they have, are there meetings that take place, or?
Well, they have a lot of small ones in England. Last year, Troy Temple had us at Philadelphia, and that was the first time Jimmy Skews had been to the United States. And, the Philly convention was big, and there must have been 100 or so BTC members there. A lot of them take booths. So we're trying to get booths from major conventions just to set up like a little museum and sign up people, because the draw will be good from the Bristol Tattoo Club members. We'll sign up more members. It's a nice little display of history, and I mean, it's not a big money thing. I mean, it's $20 to join,
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to retire on that. But Jimmy was determined to keep, his father and grandfather's club alive, which it's a cool old bat logo. I'll be selling shirts and pennants. Jimmy sells shirts. It's a really retro, cool look,
Yeah.
So people in traditional tattooing should love it,
Yeah. Well, I think that I think it can expand even past traditional tattooing, and some of those, those fine artist tattooers
Right.
can find something good in it as well. I mean, I think the more that we educate people about not only the history, but within the history, educating people about the history of tattooing, I think that you also lead them to understand some of the things that as tattooers we need to make sure are going to work within tattoos.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's killer tattoo artists in the BTC, don't get me wrong, but they also list a lot about history. I'm on a Bristol Tattoo Collectors site, which is 100 guys, so it's always, if you have information about a machine or a 1900 sheet of flash, they'll do it. Then on the artist site, there's good stuff, but there's all scale of art available. It's not just traditional. There's killer artists on there.
Yeah.
They just have an appreciation for where it came from.
Yeah.
And the BTC, they can go on fans of Les Skews and the Bristol Tattoo Club on Facebook. You can just type that in and you'll get a brief history of what's going on.
That's good.
It doesn't cost a penny.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. I really think that those forms of education are going to be the not the new thing, because it's been around for a long time, but a resurgence of that type of thing is going to happen, and I think it needs to happen because there's so much bad information out there about tattooing and about there's so many bad tattooers out there as well. And I think that if you get people excited about the history of tattooing, it's gonna make them excited about finding the quality artists that are around in their city. And there's so many of them now.
Right. Well, as I always say, there's more than one art book in the art museum, so there's folk art and there's fine art and there's abstract art and conceptual art. So, it's not limited to how cool you can airbrush. I'm a collector of folk art also, little kids art, mentally ill people art, there's all kind. So there's that many clients too. So it gives you a chance to find the artist that works for you, Mm-hmm. I don't want an airbrush portrait. I'd rather have a skull with a knife through it at this point in my career. Yeah. I went through the whole Japanese thing. That was a major influence with Cliff Raven, Don Nolan, Ed Hardy. Those were the three top guys, And then Hardy was doing everything, portraits and stuff, traditional stuff. He brought the resurgence of traditional back in. So there's room for everybody,
Yeah. Nolan, I used one of the best machines I ever used, talking about machines, was a left-handed Don Nolan machine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I used it for a long time. It was the guy that I worked for, Tom Generu, who was out of Rising Phoenix Tattoo in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Yeah, he's passed on now, but he had a machine. He would go up and get work from Don up at Acme, and
he had still up there.
He had one of the coolest dragons. He had his whole side from his shoulder and his chest panel down through his big fat belly was this yellow dragon. According to him, all put in by Don Nolan with a 4 flat.
Yeah, yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, you want to baffle guys. Greg James, world-renowned artist that used to be at Sunset, now he's at Deluxe. He can tattoo everything with one machine with a 4 flat shader. Now, if you can color better than Greg James, I'll give it up. Greg James, a master tattoo artist, he'll outline with the machine, put a 4 flat in that same machine, and color.
Yeah.
So there goes that theory of, fast liners, slow liners, flappy shaders. Greg has trained his hand to use one machine. That's the Robert Benedetti Sunset Strip theory. One machine for everything.
Wow.
And it works. I used to use one. It's just a slower process. You have to use flats instead of magnums so much. But nobody colors better than Greg James as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what they use, And he's such a wonderful guy. I'm going to go out to the national convention in L.A. here the end of April.
Yep.
And, see my friend Robert, see my friend Greg, and just a wonderful artist, And just, he said he zins it in. He has trouble like anybody else, and he just makes it work. And when you see his work, it just blows my mind,
I love that. Zen it in.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he goes, I don't know, his machine's a sputter at about 3 or 4 volts, and he just works. And the next thing, there's some elaborate back piece done. It's amazing,
Yeah, I remember being in Sunset Strip. I was in L.A. I don't know if it was when I was in L.A. for one of the Inkslinger balls, or I went out there and I worked one of those one year. Got to see what was the name of the doctor that had those full back piece from Sailor Jerry's big dragon back piece.
Oh yeah, I know you mean. I don't know his name, but he did it in like 5 days or 4 days.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I got to see that in person.
Yeah, I met him years ago. It was done in sections.
Yeah. I got to see that in person. That was pretty cool. And but I remember walking down and walking into Sunset Strip, and this blew my mind. I had seen in magazines and stuff Philip Liu's work. It was the first time I saw any Philip Liu work in person. And this kid had a full sleeve, shoulder to wrist of water and rocks and flowers.
Right.
And 8 hours. He said it took him one sitting, 8 hours, laid it in there, and it was done. He had a sleeve, and I was blown away by that and by the.
Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal artist. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's the young prodigy, Philip Liu. I mean, that was as good as it got,
Yeah.
And he's a nice guy. He's a talented artist, and there's one of him that comes along like Ed Hardy, Cliff Raven, Don Nolan, I used to go to Chicago and get tattooed by Cliff, and then right after the 76 convention, which I went to, first one that your Q put on, Cliff bought Tuttle's shop on Sunset Strip. And then Cliff moved out there. And now Robert Benedetti owns it. And a few years ago, they had to move down the strip a bit due to rent increase and stuff.
Yeah. How was that working with Raven? I mean, he was going to get work by Raven, Cliff.
It was great. I admired the guy. He was a genius. I think he was a Mensa member, and he was smart, and he was right to the point. A lot of really good people: Ken Cameron, Dennis Dwyer, Robert Benedetti, Greg James. Just a list of people passed through that shop, and all their tattooing got better. I'd give anything to work for him. Then he offered me a job, and I had a 2-year-old kid, so I was living in Ohio, so it was just Nick's, but. He was close enough when I went to Chicago I could see him. Right, then later I met Don Nolan, and I'd never met Ed Hardy, and Nolan did my back and my ribs because he was traveling. And Nolan tattooed Raven's back and Don Ed Hardy's upper arms. Nolan's like a painter that just learned to tattoo, but he's an oil painter. But Don's 74, still tattooing, Cliff passed away, and Ed Hardy, he doesn't need any help. So
yeah, I just saw that.